It's a common source of friction when you're caring for a loved one with dementia. You're sure your person needs to take a bath or a shower, and they're refusing to do so, sometimes saying they just took one. We have great tips for you today on Still Time for Joy about how to reduce the conflict and even adjust your own expectations about how often showering is needed. Hello, I'm Sandra Levine, host of Still Time for Joy. My guest today is Deb Hallisey, a certified dementia practitioner and a consultant to families who need help with caregiving. Welcome to the show, Deb.
Hi, Sandy. Great to be with you again.
And with you as well. So, of course, showering and bathing are so important. It can help prevent skin infections, urinary tract infections. Of course, you don't want your loved one to have unpleasant body odor. In your work with families, how often does this issue come up?
Pretty much eventually it comes up with everybody, right? Like in the early stages, when they are still remembering how to do these steps and when they are still conscious of cleanliness and things like that. Not as much, although they may not be doing a great job, right? But as the disease progresses, yes, it very much becomes something that can be a fight sometimes.
And what do you think are some of the reasons why this becomes a battle?
I think there's a lot of reasons, right? I think that a big one is just trust, right? That the person trusts you, that you have built up that trust, or they, and then when they start to not remember you, that really becomes an issue as well. Privacy is another one, particularly like if I think about my mom who was in her 80s when I started caring for her, like that was a very modest generation, right? And stripping down in front of somebody was something that is like, oh my gosh, we just don't do that. So privacy is a big one. And sometimes it's just out and out fear as well. It could be a fear of falling. It could be a fear of just getting underneath the water as well, right? In a shower. I mean, I think it's so interesting because the more you know about your person, the better off you are. If you know the history of your person, they could have had a really scary experience in a lake or a pool. And so getting in water for them can bring that fear back as well.
Sure. And if you're talking about a bath, sometimes their depth perception is off and just their senses in general aren't the same as they used to be. So a lot of fear comes into the mix. They also, though, may not even perceive the need to shower or bathe.
100%, especially as the disease moves on, right? And it gets back to the senses. They just don't realize that the unpleasant odor is coming from them. And it also gets back to they lose the sense of time. And so you may think, okay, we showered on Monday, we need to shower again on Tuesday, and which is just not true. Like you don't have to shower every day. You can do sponge bath in between, but they're not going to remember that they showered 3 days ago. They're just not going to remember that. So that also becomes part of the battle as well.
Yeah, my mom would not really want to shower as things progressed, and she would say, I just took a shower this morning, or and she also went to sponge baths on her own because she didn't want to get in the shower. And I think that there was a fear of falling involved. Certainly one of the easiest things to do to reduce the conflict is realize that a full bath or a full shower is probably not necessary every day. So to some degree, isn't this a matter of changing our own expectations about the importance of daily showering?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like, it's so interesting because in other cultures, they don't necessarily bathe daily, right? It's just, we have this real thing about being clean and smelling nice and all of that. And truly, you don't have to bathe every day, and a sponge bath in between is just fine. The other thing that's really interesting, like again, if it's an older generation, they didn't shower every day.
Yeah.
They just didn't, right? And you go back far enough and they showered on Saturday night only to get ready for church. And so again, if they're living in that time era, like why are we showering? I'm not going anywhere as well. So that's part of it also.
Okay, so now perhaps on a certain day it's been determined a shower is not only desirable, but it's needed, or a bath. So, what can people do to set the stage for success as far as getting ready for the bathing or showering?
It's absolutely setting a stage, right? Like, so before, the very first thing you want to do, you want to go in the bathroom. If there's going to be a shower, you want to have the water on so it's warm, maybe not at full pressure, right? You want to make sure that the heat is on, that there's some kind of heating element so that the room is actually warm. You want to have the towels laid out and ready, the shampoo laid out and ready. You really are setting the stage up for success. I mean, one of the best fun things I think I've heard people do is, instead of saying like, come on, we got to shower, and getting pushback, they would put on music that they loved, and they would dance down the hallway together and dance into the bathroom. So it became about that fun dance and not about like dragging them down the hall to try and get them into the bathroom. So I think that it's really important to have all of those things ready for them as well.
And make that bathroom nice and warm. You mentioned putting on some kind of heat. What I've read is if you, the person who's helping them bathe or shower, is sweating, that's the right temperature for the room. So it should be really nice and warm.
Yeah. Yeah. Which really would just make me cranky, which is a shame because I need to have patience while we're doing this.
Sure. So how about a towel or a robe? There are ways to use towels and robes so the person isn't completely exposed. How can we use towels and robes to make this less frightening for people?
Right. Yeah, no, true. And in fact, if you can make the towel and robe warm, like have it out, right? Make it warm in some way, that would be great. So instead of like going in and buttoning the shirt right away, which can be one of like, you're in my space, don't do that. Put a large towel around them, be talking, be very calm and tell them what you're going to do. Okay, before we get in the shower or in the bath, we need to take your shirt off. So underneath the towel, take the shirt off. Maybe you put a towel over their lap as well. And as much as they are still able to help you do it, let them have that sense of independency in doing it. But covering them up with a bath towel or with a robe and then helping them undress under that cover gives them the privacy and the dignity that really everybody needs throughout their end of their life.
And talk to me a little bit more about the process and how you can involve your loved one by explaining what you're doing, by step explaining the process, and also letting them encouraging them to do as much as possible on their own.
Yeah. So one of the things that we've talked about in the past is cueing, right? Like you may say to someone, okay, time to get undressed. And at this stage, they can do that. But there's going to come a time where they have lost knowing what the process of getting undressed is. And this gets back to trust as well. Like coming at somebody to start undoing their shirt or their blouse can be very frightening and intimidating, and you can start to get some aggressive behavior. But if you can say to them, okay, first thing we're going to do is going to take off your shirt and I'm going to undo the buttons. And you might say, okay, I'm going to start at the top, at the bottom, and you start at the top and we'll meet at the middle. Well, if they're spending the whole time not being able to get that unbutton done, by the time you get there, they're comfortable and you can undo that button for them, right? So it's very much about cueing and telling them step by step what you're going to do, making it fun, maybe keeping the music on. And while you're actually doing the action of unbutton the buttons, you're both singing to the song or whatever it is, right? It's about making it fun. It's about making them feel safe. And it's about keeping their dignity and their warmth.
And you could also explain, I'm going to hand you the washcloth and add some soap. And they also, to as much a degree as possible, can actually be bathing or showering themselves with some cueing, right?
That's also where we need to let go a little bit, right? Like if they're not touching every spot on their leg or they're not getting to their toes, doesn't really matter. There are certain areas you really want them to wash or you want to help them wash. But this fixation that we have of you have to have a 10-minute shower and get everything, you kind of need to just let go of that. The win sometimes is even just getting them in the shower, right? Or getting them in the tub. Don't make that into a battle because they're not cleaning things as well as you are, right? And maybe you hand them a washcloth and say, okay, I want you to do your shoulders and I'm going to work down at the bottom of you. And so you're back to doing it together,
Sure.
which is part of cueing, back to kind of making it fun. I've never done this, but I can picture myself doing the Five Little Piggies again, right? Because that's just kind of a natural, fun thing to do, and to just joke about stuff. But letting them do as much as they can, cueing that you're doing it with them can really make it less of a battle and more fun.
And also, there is equipment you can use that you may not have thought of that can make this whole process a lot easier and more effective. And one of the best things to try is a handheld shower head as opposed to relying on an overhead shower head. So how does that help?
It really does, because again, if somebody has a fear of the water because they've gone underwater or whatever that is, having that rain down on them can be very, very scary. But having that handheld shower, and oh, by the way, if you need to be in that shower with them, have a bathing suit on because you're going to get wet, right? But having that handheld shower so you can have them hold it and do it, or you can do it for them. Okay, scrub your shoulder. Now let's do this. There's so many things that are available in a bathroom now. We know about the grab bars. You're going to want grab bars in there. We know about the bench seats. And in particular, if you've got a tub and they have a hard time stepping over that tub, there are bath chairs that kind of slide out. So they actually would sit on the bath chair. You'd help get their legs over, and then you would slide back in. Walk-in shower is the best if you had it, but non-skid mats, all of those things are all the things you want to have in place, ready for them when you walk in that bathroom.
And if you really can't manage this, either your person is just pushing back, if it's a battle every time you try to do it, how about bringing in an aide or somebody to help you with this?
Yes. You absolutely can do that. The best you could do from a privacy standpoint is have the aide be of the same sex, right? What would be lovely is if there was a relationship with the aide already, right? Because then there's that trust built up. So if you're having an aide come in once or twice a week, make those the bath days. But you can say, I'm going to be right outside the door. And you can talk to them outside the door to make them comfortable, whatever it is. But that, again, gets back to the cueing, telling them what's going to happen. And that's an important thing. If you're going to bring an aide in, you probably are going to have to do some training with that aide. We trust that they already have training, but they don't know your mom or your dad or
Sure.
whoever it is. And so any insight you can give them about them and how best to handle this will be really important to having that trust start to grow and grow and grow.
Well, Deb Hallisey, you've given us such great information about how to make bathing and showering a little bit easier, including letting go, how often we have to do it. Thank you so much for all this great information and for coming on the show today.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
If you found today's show helpful, please share the information with someone who needs it and follow Still Time for Joy for more practical tips on weathering life's storms, as well as inspiring stories of people who have turned their pain into purpose. Please consider supporting the work that goes into producing the show on Patreon. Follow Sandra Levine Productions on Facebook and YouTube, and learn more at sandralevine.com.